We are on page 20 of handout 2. We are in the Sixth Commandment, you shall not commit adultery. What does God require here with the Sixth Commandment? God requires us to consider sexuality a pure and good gift of God. Bob, I think your phone's going off. Who would like to get for us Genesis 1:27 to 31?
We haven't taken Ephesians. We haven't taken Ephesians.
We handled that last week.
Oh, okay, all right. Genesis 1:27 to 31.
So you got that?
Yeah.
Okay, when we get to it, we would like Mark 10, 6 through 9.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley. Hebrews 13:4. Elizabeth?
All right, I'll do that.
Would you get Titus 2, 11 through 12? Thank you. All right, Genesis, when you're ready.
Okay. Genesis 27. 1:27. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Verse 31. God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day.
All right, thank you. So Genesis here is telling us that the creation of mankind as male and female, is a very good thing. And God created humanity that way to be complementary to each other, which the rest of Genesis deals with. Okay, God requires us to honor marriage as God's institution, the lifelong union of one man and one woman. Mark 10, 6 through 9.
But from the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then, they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate.
Thank you. So from the Mark passage and from Genesis chapter 2, where Adam himself talks about this, we see that the foundation of marriage is the union of just one man and just one woman into one flesh predates pretty much everything else in the universe except the planet, the animals, the sun, the stars, and the moon. Everything else comes after the institution of this thing. And it is God himself who is the one that institutes it, which means we have no control over its form or its function. It is something that God has handed on to us and is highly honored. God requires us to reserve sexual intercourse for the marriage partner alone. Hebrews 13:4.
Let marriage be held in honor amongst all, and let the marriage bed be untitled. For God will judge the sexuality, immortality, and adulterers.
Okay. That passage should be pretty clear. However, people continually ignore what Paul teaches us there, as what Jesus also teaches about marriage and about the creation of marriage. He teaches us it's to be between the man and his wife and not exceed beyond that. It's also not supposed to come before man and wife become husband and wife. Because that is also sin. That is also a violation of God's creation. God requires us to control our sexual passions and desires. Titus 2.
For grace of God has appeared that offers salvation to all people. And Jesus said no to ungodliness and worldly passions, but life, self-control, and right godly lives in the present age.
Thank you. So, we are not to give into the passions of the flesh. Now, the ancients have this idea of the passions as being something sort of, but not quite external to us, that have the power to take over us and lead us to do all sorts of things. And that they understood this as a bad thing. Passions should not rule the man, but rather the man should rule the passions. To be a truly virtuous man was to have your passions firmly under your control, so that they only operated according to what you will and what the virtues dictate. So the passion of eros is a bad thing if it is let to run rampant, but if it is taken under control and guided by the virtue of chastity, for instance, then eros becomes a virtuous thing, a God-blessed thing. Likewise, anger as a passion can be very bad if it is allowed to run freely. Then it becomes wrath, and wrath is destructive. It burns everything around it down to the ground. But if you temper it with justice, or you temper it with the virtue of mercy, both of those being virtues, then anger ceases to be a dangerous fire that destroys, but can be directed toward good, the defense of the weak, for instance. All of the passions of man are part of this creation, but they are easily corrupted into leading the man astray. So the virtues must be had in order to control the passions. Questions about anything that we talked of so far? If you want to know more about the virtues and the passions, I highly advise the book After Virtue. By, and this marker's almost not good anymore, Al Lister, I think. I believe that's how the last name is spelled. It's a bit dense. It's a book on philosophy, but it is insightful to the state of morality and virtue in the past and now. Other questions? I know there wasn't one, but I'm pretending that one of you asked, where can I learn more about virtue? No? Okay. What does God forbid with this commandment? God forbids divorce except in the case of marital unfaithfulness.
What is marital unfaithfulness?
We have the two examples at the top of the next page. Adultery and desertion are the only two that the church has ever recognized. And for the second one, for desertion, there's still to this day argument about whether or not that one's actually intended as one of the requirements necessary to achieve divorce in marital infidelity. But we'll get to that. First, adultery. Matthew 19, 6 through 9. Ashley's got that. Who would like to get 1 Corinthians 7:15? Thank you, Elizabeth. Matthew 19.
So then they are no longer two but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not be separated. They said to him, why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away? He said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. And whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery.
Okay, thank you. Note the difference in even the words used between those who are accusing Jesus of something and what Jesus himself says when he clarifies the law. They ask him, why then did Moses command that you give a certificate of divorce? Almost as if Moses said, you must do this. Moses did not, of course, command divorce. Instead, as Jesus correctly points out, permitted it because of the hardness of your hearts. What we should take just from the difference between those two words is God allows divorce, but he does not like divorce. At no point does he actually say, you must divorce your husband. You must divorce your wife. Instead, what he says is, you may, but it would be better if you did not, if it is possible. Yeah. So if you're married and your spouse goes out there and commits adultery with someone else, you are allowed in God's eyes to divorce, and you have not sinned. You are the innocent party, you're the one who has been wronged. You are the one who is mourning the death of your marriage. But if the offending spouse repents, actually does show contrition, works to save the marriage, then divorce should at all costs be avoided. join the two together. And what God has joined together, man should not separate. So if reconciliation is possible, reconciliation must be sought. However, we also have the situation where the offending spouse lies, only pretends at repentance. This is not genuine. This is the offending spouse manipulating the one who has been sinned against. And really the only solution to that is a very good counselor to whom both will actually listen, which is not going to happen if the offender is lying like this, or divorce. And then it is truly the death of the two become one flesh. And the one who is wrong is set free from this, free from the marriage, guiltless, but mourning the death. And the one who refuses to repent, refuses to reconcile, is not a Christian. We must say this, because this is a sin that is not repented. Repentance can happen many years down the road, after it is much, much too late because of other things happening to reconcile, but that's not really the issue.
Not a good Christian.
Living in unrepentant sin is not being a Christian. The Bible's pretty clear about that. All right, desertion, 1 Corinthians 7:15.
But if the unbelieving part separates, let it be so. In such a case, a brother or sister is not a slave. God has called you to peace.
Okay. So note, if the unbelieving spouse does not reconcile, then you are set free. God has called you to peace. It's not a clear statement that you are allowed to remarry. It would be nice if Paul was a little bit clearer in this, but the implication really does seem to be that the unbelieving spouse abandons the Christian, and so God says, you are free. What does it mean to be free from such a situation? It means to likely seek marriage again. This is where we get the argument that desertion also counts. Jesus doesn't say it in Matthew, but it's not desertion that's the issue that he's dealing with the Jews. They were divorcing their wives for the smallest infraction, even just because they felt like it. But this is, you have a Christian and you have a non-Christian, and the non-Christian up and leaves. Not because the Christian has done anything wrong, not even as it seems from the text that the non-Christian has done something wrong, just abandonment. So that is our best guess as to what's going on with that. Any other reason for divorce the Bible considers immoral and illegitimate, and if you sought divorce, you were in the wrong, you were showing yourself not to be a true Christian, you were abandoning what God is putting together, you're actually the one who's tearing it apart. So when people say, oh, we've fallen out of love, and then they want to get a divorce because of that, no, there is no such thing as falling out of love. Falling out of passion, sure. But even that wouldn't be a cause for divorce. When God has joined you together in marriage bonds, that is for the rest of your life. Until God takes one of you away through death. He didn't say it would be easy. But he did say that marriage is good. And if two actually work together, fight hard for their marriage, difficulty can be overcome. Storms will pass. But only if you actually try. Questions, comments, and most important, concerns. There's a lot of divorce going around. Has been since no-fault divorce laws, those evil things passed. So, in all likelihood, you know a lot of people who have gotten divorced, both for correct reason and for wrong reasons. Questions?
Well, in the state of Mississippi, you have to be separated for a year before you can get divorced, right?
I don't know the laws.
Yeah, I heard that law. No, it's not settled.
separation in sin Mississippi. There is no such thing as legal separation.
I didn't know this when I read
Generally, as I understand it, if husband and wife separate physically, divorce is almost always what happens next. And it doesn't matter the time. It's all but inevitable. The only things that seem to undo this is family and friends doing the reconciling for them and bringing them back together, actually working to support them. Okay. Somebody who has divorced without biblical cause and then gotten married again is not acting like a Christian. But can this person return to the church after these grave sins?
I would think so.
Yes. There's only one sin that the Bible talks of as being unforgivable, and that's denying the work of the Holy Spirit. So yes, even this sin may be forgiven. But as with any public sin, this must be confessed. You must actually be repentant. You must show this in your life. Otherwise, how can we, the church, believe you when you have so publicly violated God's law? But it is possible, and it does happen. All right. God forbids sexual sins such as rape, homosexuality, incest, sexual child abuse, obscenity, and the use of pornographic materials. Who would like to get Romans 1:24? Thank you.
Therefore, God gave them over in the lust of their hearts to impurity, so that their bodies would be dishonored among them. For this reason, God gave them over to degrading passions. For their women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural. And in the same way also, the men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error.
So it's talking about there at the end of verse 27, AIDS and incontinence. Once upon a time, the disease now called AIDS was known as the homosexual disease, because the only people who ever had it were homosexuals and those that they raped. It is unnatural because God has created sex for three purposes: consolation of husband and wife, purity of sexual desire, so that your desire is only for your spouse, and then the procreation of children. Not in that order, though. All three of them at the same time. Procreation of children is naturally the outcome of sex. So anything involving the sexual organs that does not result in that isn't sex. Instead, it is an abomination in God's eyes. We also have the example of Judah's son. Some of you may be aware of this, but Judah, Jacob's son, he has in turn three sons by his wife. The first one marries this woman named Tamar. And he somehow, we don't know how, angers God, and God kills him. And then, as was the custom back then of levirate marriage, which is a different topic for a different time, Onan, Judah's second son, marries Tamar to raise up for the first son an heir. But Onan doesn't want to do this. So he has sex with Tamar, but he spills his seed on the ground, pulls out at the last second. And this makes God very unhappy, because that's not the use of the woman, not for the pleasure of the man purely, but for the procreation of children. And Onan was specifically stopping the procreation of children, in effect, to spite his older brother. And so God kills Onan. So So that's where we know masturbation, pornographic materials, other things like that are immoral. Questions? God forbids even sexually impure thoughts and desires. Who would like Matthew 5:28?
I got it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. 15:19. Who would take that? Thank you, Ashley. Go ahead.
Okay. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart.
So we should understand that this doesn't just apply here to the Sixth Commandment, but it applies to all of the other commandments. Where if we have the thought, it is the same as doing the deed in God's eyes. There's no difference. Please.
For out of the heart proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies.
Thank you. It's not like the demons are coming in and they're putting the thoughts into your mind. There is a possibility that they are doing that. They are actively trying to tempt us. But the majority, at the very least, of all of our sinful thoughts come because of the wicked heart that we inherited from Adam. These also count as genuine sin in God's eyes and damnable to hell because of it. And we will be stuck with this so long as we remain in this flesh, as Paul tells us in Romans. Questions? Comments on the Fifth Commandment? No, not a pleasant one. I'm glad that your children weren't here for this. Had they been here, we would have gone. We'll talk about this later. Seventh Commandment, you shall not steal. What does this mean together, please?
We should fear and love God so that we do not take our neighbor's money or goods or give them in any dishonest way, but help them to improve and protect his possessions and income.
Good, thank you. So we once again not only have the negative command, don't do this, but we have Luther saying implied in this is also the positive command, do this. Look out for the good of your neighbor's possessions. In the Seventh Commandment, God forbids every kind of robbery, theft, and dishonest way of giving things. Who would like to get for us Ephesians 4:28? Thank you, Elizabeth. And I have two addendums to look up as well. Who would like Exodus 22:25? All right, John, thank you. And who would like Ezekiel 18:5-9? Thank you, Ashley. Do you want me to repeat those two?
Ezekiel 18:5-9.
That's correct. All right, Ephesians 4:28.
Okay. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need.
Okay. So, it's quite clear that one. Don't steal, but rather work. Why do you work? Like I've said before, so you can help your neighbor who is in need. Why do some people steal?
Because the neighbors don't help.
Yeah, there is that. That sometimes people steal because they are starving. The story Les Miserables, the entire reason behind it is because Jean Valjean's sister's children are starving, and no one will help him. So he goes and he breaks a window pane to steal a single loaf of bread so that his nieces and nephews do not die. And for that, he spends more than a decade as a slave. He shouldn't have stolen, but likewise, all of the people of France are guilty for not helping him and his family in the other's life. Exodus 22:25.
If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, you are not to act as a creditor to him. You shall not charge him interest.
Yeah, note that it's talking specifically about the poor of my people. This was a law that was for the Israelites, that if someone was poor among you, borrowed money from you, or borrowed anything from you, as I think the next passage we get to. Or no, that's one of the other passages on usury, but it didn't include here. Loaning of anything, and then as an Israelite demanding interest from another Israelite, that is a very terrible thing in God's eyes. Why? Because you are apparently stealing from his labor. You have given him a gift. Expect only what you gave back in return, is what God's saying.
I can't even get along with interest.
It's not an easy thing to understand in the modern setting, because what is our banking system? When you put your money in the bank, what does the bank do? Well, it goes and it loans it out at interest, so that you get interest on it. And yet, if the money is not loaned out by the bank, then a lot of things are not built, because a lot of people can't afford to build them. There are all sorts of problems that we don't have time to get into, and I don't even know the depths of it. But our modern economic system is in violation of this rule of Exodus 22:25. Ezekiel 18:5-9.
Alright, it's a long one, so.
Yep.
Okay. But if a man is just and does what is lawful and right, he is not eaten on the mountains, nor lifted up his eyes to the idols of the house of Israel, nor defiled his neighbor's wife, nor approached a woman during her impurity. He has not oppressed anyone, but has restored to the debtor his pledge, has robbed no one by violence, but has given his bread to the hungry, and covered the naked with clothing. If he has not exacted usury, nor taken any increase, but has withdrawn his hand from iniquity, and executed true judgment between man and man, if he has walked in my statutes and kept my judgments faithfully, he is just. He shall surely live, says the Lord God.
Okay, so long, but it also deals with so much of what the Ten Commandments say. It's basically, if this man keeps the Ten Commandments perfect, then he is a righteous man, and he shall surely live. Do any of us actually live up to this? No. Who is righteous? No. What young man can name his sins? What young man can keep himself from sin? Psalm asks us. No one is righteous before your eyes. David answers to his own question. But in this one, in addition to all of the recapitulation of the commandments, we see it again, does not loan at interest, and does not take, what was the word that was used? So he doesn't loan, nor does he take the excess.
Take any increase?
Increase, thank you. Increase, there is the profit gained from them. How do we reconcile this with the modern system? We can't. Our modern system is broken. And it's been broken for, 700 years or more. It used to be that the only people who could give out a loan were Jews, because Christians wouldn't dare do it. I can't loan for interest to my brother. I'll just give him the money, and then he'll give it back to me when he no longer needs it. Whereas the Jews were, no, I got a lot of money, and I can charge you interest because I'm not a Christian. And they begrudgingly did agree to this. This is why in Shakespeare the Jews are always the bad guys. This is why in Ivanhoe, what is his name? Isaac the Jew, everybody hates him except Ivanhoe. And Ivanhoe is the only one who doesn't hate him because, well, Isaac saves Ivanhoe's life because Ivanhoe saved his own life. And very likely because men like Isaac were the ones who kept Ivanhoe and the other crusaders alive on the road by their loans.
It's really not the Jews that anti-Semitism doesn't even exist, because it's not the Jews that people are talking about, it's those that are posing as Jews, claim to be Jews and are not. That's what they're really saying when they say this Jew did that or that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's right.
So, there's a bit on usury. We are stuck with a system. You have to use the bank, you have to use the credit card, you have to use the debit card. And all I can tell you is, if you have a loan, do whatever you can to get out of it. It is a sinful world. We're stuck with it. Don't worry about it.
But once was a time, not that long ago, that Lutherans did not even buy insurance.
Yep. Yeah, because buying insurance is gone. But now it's a legal requirement.
Oh, well, there's nothing we can do about that.
Yeah.
Insurance insurance was viewed very poorly. And then they got in the insurance business. So I don't know what to say about that.
It's not one of those things where we're stuck. Like, we cannot have our house unless we get a loan, because houses here are stupidly expensive, even if they're trash heaps like ours was. And we also can't have it unless we have insurance on it.
So you can't get the loan without insurance.
Yeah. And it is immoral, but it's a system we're stuck with. There's nothing we as Christians can do about that. Except, there also used to be a thing in the same days where if somebody from your church community fell on hard times, like a hurricane came in and swept their house away, what would the church do? They would come in and they would rebuild the house at no cost. The men of the congregation would gather together the resources, the time, and rebuild that house, and refurnish it, and put food on your table.
That's when you know you found your people.
Yeah. But who actually has the resources to do that now? We still have something like that for our now former trash heap of a house, and then the church have rebuilt so much of it, which we could not have done in the same amount of time.
Remember that in ancient Israel, where every 7 years all debts were forgiven?
I don't know how this reconciles. In all likelihood, and this is a guess, some of the debts were just the loan money, no interest. But you keep working and you keep working, and the fields don't produce, and so you never earn back what was given to you. And then on the 7th year, what was owed, not anymore, just what was owed, what's left of what is owed is forgiven. That's what part of it may have. Another part of it was slavery. Israel had 2 standards of slavery. For the native born, can be sold into slavery. So say, your land produces no crops, it's burned down, all the bugs eat it, whatever, and you're going to starve. Well, you have an option. You can take one of your children, you can sell that child to a neighbor to work as a slave for that man, so that you can put food on your table. And this isn't a bad thing, because what happens to the child, usually a son, who is sold to that neighbor? That son is now fed as a slave, really servant, in the house of your neighbor who is not served. And then he eats well, but he works hard. And then at the end of the 7 years, if you have not paid back what was given for your son, then your son is released, and is released with a gift. Because that was also a part of a requirement of the 7-year forgiveness. If somebody has entered your house as a slave, you send him away with a gift, unless he chooses to stay. So that's the part that I do know. It's the other part that I'm not positive about.
The way the rules are laid out in Exodus, Leviticus.
Slavery rules, that's Leviticus again.
Leviticus. Slavery sounds kind of nice.
Well, no,
Wow.
because it's hard labor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is hard labor. You do have to do what you're told.
Well.
And you're not a Jew, so it wouldn't be good for you.
Oh.
Because the foreigner did not get released at the 7th year. The foreigner was a perpetual slave unless he or she purchased the way out of slavery.
Or married into the family.
Yeah, that was another thing. And then we have the really weird part where if you have a slave, whether foreigner or native, and he marries while a slave, and she is also a slave, and then when he is released, she is not released, nor is her children. Which is really weird. I don't get that. But that is a little bit far afield. Questions, comments, otherwise?
She probably had other duties.
No. No. So once again, don't overly worry yourself about the problem of theft through usury. It is the modern system. There's nothing we can do to get out of it. But when it comes to yourself, somebody asks you for something, Give, expecting not even what you have given back.
I always do that anyway.
Positive aspects. We should do everything we can to help our neighbor retain and build what is his. This commandment presumes that personal possessions are not an evil in themselves. Consider also the promise of inherited land of the Israelites in the Old Testament, such as in the book of Joshua. So this commandment only says don't steal what belongs to somebody else. It says own stuff. You must. You don't actually have to. But it is, for all intents and purposes, a command that property is good. And what belongs to you does actually belong to you. For somebody to come and take that from you is a violation of this command. So communism and socialism is unbiblical, just based on this commandment. But overcharging is forbidden. There are verses on that as well. Do not overcharge. Do not have unjust weights. All right. What is the Eighth Commandment?
You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor.
What does this mean?
You should fear and love God, so that we do not tell lies about the neighbor, betray him, slander him, or hurt his reputation, but defend him, speak well of him, and explain everything in the kindest way.
Once again, we get the negative command, don't do this, but rather do this. Just as with property, it is our obligation as Christians to defend the reputation and, in fact, build up the reputation of those around us.
What if they're like crackheads and they don't deserve it?
Well, then you defend their reputation insofar as you can, but when they insist by being crackheads on making fools of themselves, what can you do but throw up your hands? It's at that point, it's on them.
Thank you, God.
So, first in this is, we may not lie. Who'd like Ephesians 4:25?
I got Proverbs.
Okay. 4:25. Going once. You can't go once because nobody's claiming it. In this auction house, you have to actually bid for it. Ashley, thank you. Who would like the addendum verse, Exodus 1:15 through 21? Okay, Exodus 1:15 through 21. Thank you. Ephesians 4:25. One word.
Therefore, putting away lying, let each one of you speak truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another.
Okay, pretty clear there. Put away lying. Who lies? Non-Christians do. Don't do it. But rather, speak truth with whom? With your neighbor. It's all about the neighbors now in this part of the Ten Commandments. Verse 3, us and God. Number 4, us and family. And number 5, and number 6. And now we are beyond the family also, but into the community. Not lying to them, but speaking the truth to them. What truth specifically? What is the best thing to be speaking with your neighbors about?
The gospel.
Yeah, gospel. There we go. Proverbs 11:13.
Whoever goes about slaying reveals secrets, but he whom is trustworthy in the spirit keeps a thing covered.
Okay, so what's this? This one is talking specifically about slander. If you, whether or not you're being stupid, but say you walk by your neighbor's house and you see him doing something not good, well, you're not under any obligation to reveal whatever it was that he was doing, burying his neighbor's cat, whatever. You are to keep that hidden because it's not public. Yeah, go ahead and confront him in person. That's something that he should make public if he's killed his neighbor's cat. But that's not your to reveal because you don't know what's actually going on. For all you know, the neighbor's cat died, the neighbor's old, doesn't know how to bury the cat, so ask him to do this. So you could be completely misunderstanding what's going on, like, oh my goodness, Brian killed his neighbor's cat! When what's Brian actually done? It's actually part of kindness. And now I have slandered Brian. This is a very bad thing to do. This is one reason why you don't do it. But also because the well-being of your neighbor's reputation is your own reputation. And you must defend it. Now, if it is a public thing, you are under no obligation to defend it because it is known. If it is a private thing, and you know it because he has told you, or because you have by accident found out, then it is your obligation to defend it, so long as you can. Okay. Exodus 1:15 through 21.
Okay. Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other was named Puah. And he said, when you are helping the Hebrew women to give birth, and you see them upon the birth stool, if it is a son, then you shall put him to death. But if it is a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt had commanded them, but let the boys live. So the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing, and let the boys live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwife can get to them. So God was good to the midwives, and the people multiplied and became very mighty. Because the midwives feared God, he established households for them. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, saying, every son who is born to you are to cast into the Nile, and every daughter you are to keep alive.
Well, you have these two women, and the king of the country has specifically said, you shall do this, and then they lie to his face, unless Hebrew women were actually more vigorous than Egyptian women. I have no idea, maybe. But they appear to lie to Pharaoh's face and say, oh, they always give birth before we get there, so we can't cast the boy and kill the boys. What are we going to do? And then God looks upon them and he's happy with them for lying? What's actually going on? What makes the lie not, in this case, it appears, a bad thing? What makes it not a sin?
They're doing it at the same time.
The alternative is murder.
Yeah, it's either you break the Eighth Commandment. Either you break the Eighth Commandment, or you break the Sixth Commandment.
Is that why they have to do this?
I have no idea. I wish I knew, because it's in violation of all sorts of commandments, but I'm not sure which.
I'm not sure which.
So they protect the lives, not of the innocent, because no one is innocent, but they protect lives which were going to be unjustly taken. Pharaoh, even though, he is king and ruler over both nations, he has no right to take the lives of children. He has the right to take the men and conscript them into the army to go fight the wars, but he doesn't have the right to go out there with the sword and to kill willy-nilly. So they're lying to him to protect innocent lives, and this pleases God. They are defending the reputation of the Hebrew women and defending the lives of their sons. So what this teaches us is that sometimes a greater evil would happen if you tell the truth.
That's what I was talking about with Trump earlier. And speeding up the days, shortening the days for the chosen because of his actions now. People are looking at it like crazy. Might just be right, what you're saying.
I don't know. Maybe.
Where were
Midwives.
Yes. So, you have, it's not John Stuart Mill. He's a moral philosopher. I think he wrote The Metaphysics of Moral. So that may be John Stuart Mill. But you have this famous German philosopher who argues in one of his works that it is never, ever, ever, ever right to lie. And he says, you must always tell the truth. And for a lot of years, I actually believed him. And then you think of the Germans who were hiding the Jews and the pastors and the gypsies even during Nazi Germany. Well, how would you avoid breaking the commandment of this moral philosopher without also breaking God's commandment of thou shalt not murder?
It reminds me, it's like when David took the showbread, and it's like, that wasn't a sin for him, right? Like, there's always, you know, I think it's good to say, the vast majority, 99.9% of the time, we don't lie or steal. But for David, or in this case with lying,
Yeah, there are exceptions. For the showbread was set aside only for the priests and the Levites. And yet David comes in with his soldiers, and they're starving, and there's no food in the camp. So what does the priest do? He said, oh, not only have I got Goliath's sword for you, I've got a spread of bread for you, which is only for the scribes and Levites, the priests and Levites, and since you aren't, you'll die if you eat it. No, he actually takes the bread, this is a perfect example, and he gives it to them, and they eat, and God doesn't strike everybody dead in that instant. Why? Because they were starving. The holiness of the bread meant that it was set apart for the priests and Levites to do with as they needed. And in this case, the priest needed to give it to God's anointed one so that he and his men would continue to live and fulfill God's will elsewhere. It was good for him to violate the law of the holiness of the showbread. It was good for the Germans to lie about there being Jews, gypsies, and pastors hiding in their attics. Yeah, sure, you could have told the Gestapo when they get there, do you have jewels in your vaults? Well, yeah, I've got some in this vault, and this vault, and that vault, and maybe it would have worked. Or maybe the Gestapo are a whole bunch of
Nazis.
yeah, they're a whole bunch of impolite phrases I can't use in company. And they'll go, okay, we'll knock your walls down. And they won't take your joke of telling the truth. And then you've sentenced these Jews to death. Maybe if you actually bothered to care about the life of the other and you lied, you'll save them. But this is not the norm. All right, questions, comments? Positive aspects.
Philosophers.
Huh?
Silly philosophers.
He was, because he died a long time ago, he was a very smart man, but in this case he was wrong. Positive aspects. We should defend the reputation of our neighbor and the weak and destitute. We should always interpret what our neighbor says and does in the most positive manner. Proverbs 31, 8 through 9. Ash, 1 Peter 4, 8. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
But it is prosperity with the Proverbs.
1 Peter.
are you ready for it? Open your mouth for the speechless and the cause of all who are appointed to die. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy.
Okay, this is a positive command of what we are supposed to do. It's speaking about the lowest. Well, nobody cares about the lowest, right? Unless you're a Christian. Because that is specifically who needs the help the most. Who did Christ come to save? Not the well, but the sick. Who did he come to lift up? Not those who are high, but those who are low. The humble, God raises up, but the haughty, the proud, God doesn't even look at. 1 Peter 4:8.
Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sin.
Okay. So, if your brother sins against you, what is the loving thing to do? It is to forgive him. In the hopes that he will repent. But even if he doesn't, it is still better that we forgive him.
Because that doesn't correct yourself.
Okay. Let the injury fall off as if it were never.
Yep.
And then it loses all power. That's not a Bible passage. It's just a modern, probably not.
Way of seeing it. It's a way to perceive it. Great.
Yeah, it's if someone demands of you your cloak, give him your tunic too. If someone demands that you go a mile with him, go another mile with him. And in this way, you remove all power of the insult of the sin against you, all power that this sinner has against you, and you show them the love of God. Because is this not exactly what Christ has done for us? Final questions on commandment number 8. Okay, what is the 9th? Or really, since I've only got, what is the 9th commandment?
You shall not covet your neighbor's house.
What does this mean?
We should fear and love God so that we do not scheme to get our neighbor's inheritance or house, or gain in a way which only appears right, but help and be of service to him in keeping it.
What is the 10th commandment?
You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
What does this mean?
We should fear and love God so that we do not entice or force away our neighbor's wife, workers, or animals, or turn them against him, but urge them to stay and do their duty.
Good, thank you. So these 2 commandments concern the shelter of your neighbor and the things that have faces which belong to your neighbor. And that is the difference that the Bible is making between the roof over your neighbor's head, and then also those who look to your neighbor for their good and their labor. Those you may not covet. God, for whatever reason, God separates these 2 out into 2 different commandments in the way that the text is written. These commandments forbid desiring to get what does not belong to us. Thou shalt not steal covers this as the act, but this is a little different, because this is not you actually going and taking it, but in your heart taking it. And more than that, your heart and your eyes looking at what is currently in your hand, looking at what is in the hand of your neighbor and saying, I despise this, and I love that. So it is a hatred of what belongs to you. Who would like Romans 7 and 8? Thank you, Sam. Who would like 1 Timothy 6, 8 through 10? John. Hebrews 13, 5. Ashley. Luke 12, 15. Elizabeth, thank you. Romans 7.
But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of covetous desire. For apart from law, sin is dead.
Okay. So, what Paul's talking about here is he did not know a thing was sin until the law told him it was. Now we must remember that the law is written on our hearts. So the law says you may not, and then his sinful self says, but I want it now. When he was denied something, his sinful self coveted that thing. It was envious of that thing because he did not have it. 1 Timothy 6, 8 to 10.
If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a snare, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge men into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil, and some by longing for it have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs.
Okay. The first part, if we have food and clothing, we will be content.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy.
This is that petition of the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. It is, oh Lord, give us what we need today.
Because anything else is like a burden.
It very rapidly becomes so. How many of you are familiar with the old, this is like from the 90s into the 2000s, the Christian radio program Jungle Jam and Friends? You are. No? Or are you just laughing at the time? No, it is. It's something that folks in the family licensed to play on 91.1 FM. And in one of them, it's about proper possessions and not coveting. And they come up with this statement: the more you have to take care of the things you have. Yeah, and the lesson there is essentially what Ecclesiastes also teaches us. God has given you today. He's given you now. He's given you what is of now. Be content, because this is good for you. Don't desire more, because that is desiring tomorrow. Tomorrow is not promised. Also, do not desire yesterday, for yesterday is past, is gone. You cannot retrieve it. All you do is vex your soul. And if you strive for the future, you lose the present. You lose the present, and you only make your life worse. Because then you are no longer looking at what God has given to you, but at what you yourself can do with your own hands, which you can't even do, because even the labor of your hands, God has given you. Go read Ecclesiastes, and this is the lesson, one of the lessons that you will learn. All right, which one are we on? Positive aspect. Positive aspect, we should be content with what God has given us. Hebrews 13:5.
Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have, for he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
Okay. So what Paul says elsewhere, in what state you are now, do not seek to be out of it when you become a Christian. Are you a slave? Be content to stay a slave. Though, if you can get out of slavery, do so. If you are married, do not seek to get out of being married when you become a Christian. Are you unmarried? Do not seek to be married. Now, if you desire to be married, it says you should be married. But it is also good not. All of these things are be content with what God has given you. This includes the whole marriage topic. Do you desire to be married, but God has not given you marriage? Be content. If God so desires you to be married, He will send the right person to you. He will send actually probably a number of right people to you. Choose one and be chosen by them. But if He does not, then be content. Luke 12:15.
And he said to them, take care and be on guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions.
He who dies with his most toys still dies.
What?
I'm sorry, it's true. Yes. He who dies with the most toys still dies.
And then you're thinking about
Yeah. I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah, my sister's a funeral director. She said it's like the most horrific part
Yeah.
of it. It's families that just break apart and tear each other apart because they all turn on each other. It's just they want the stuff.
That whole statement is counter to,
What do you mean?
well, it's he who dies with the most toys wins.
Yeah, sure, he wins while he's alive, but then he dies. I concede your point, but it doesn't change my point. I have won the game of Lego. Whatever. My advice to everybody regarding the whole inheritance division of families that happens so often is, as you grow older, start getting rid of what you own, not like to strangers. God has given you this wealth, yes, to help those in need, but also for your children. Blessed is the man who sees his children's children. Blessed is the man who lays up an inheritance for his children's children. What you have gathered, give to your family as you grow old, so that when you die, the only thing that they are splitting is where you live and whatever's left of the finances that you have to keep alive. And they will love you because you have been so generous to them throughout your life. But if you hold on to it and then split up later, odds are that those who are breaking up your inheritance will fight over it, and the family will split. As most of you know, both of my parents are deceased; they're dead. And my four other siblings, this did not break us apart. Even selling the house where we all grew up didn't break us apart, though it was hard on a number of ways. It almost did. But that is due to the good work of raising us that our parents did. And that already given us a lot of the stuff that he owned. And it was really just the money, which was already parted out, and then the house. That was,
I'm an orphan too.
it sucks. It's the worst. So, we still got 6 minutes. What are you doing? All right. Any questions about Commandments 9 and Commandments 10? If you inherit a butler, treat that butler nicely. If you don't inherit a butler, don't be envious of the man who does inherit a butler. I don't know how this works.
I am the butler.
Nothing else. All right. Original sin. Who would like 2 Peter 2:4?
Why do we have 2 more minutes?
Okay.
Why do we have 2 more minutes?
Because we were delaying it 15 minutes, we're keeping it longer 15 minutes.
No, we started to lose time today.
Yeah, but because
Yeah. But we're trying to train ourselves.
Okay, all right.
So is anybody going to get a 2 Peter 2:4?
No.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. Genesis 3:1-12, Ashley. And it's so many that we won't actually get around to it, so we will pause at the inherited sin and just handle these 2 passages. Fall of the angels, 2 Peter 2:4.
For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but sent them to hell, putting them into gloomy dungeons to be held for judgment. That's it.
So yeah, that's what happened to the fallen angels. Whenever this happened, we don't know when, but presumably within the first 6 days of creation, Satan rises up against God, and a third of the angels join him in rebellion, and God throws them all into hell in prison for judgment. And yet, he has allowed them access to earth to tempt people. Fall of Adam and Eve, Genesis 3:1-12.
Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. And they had heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. Then the Lord God called to Adam and said to him, Where are you? So he said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And he said, Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded you that you should not eat? Then the man said, The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate.
Okay, thank you. So, we didn't get to the verse of promise, which is Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15 shows us is that angels, they fell into sin, and there was no forgiveness. There's no redemption for them. That third of the angels fall, that's it. Their original sin sealed for them, period. Genesis 3:15 shows us that humanity is not sealed forever because of this sin, but there is the chance of redemption for them. But from these 2 passages, we should also see sin entering the world. Angels, it seems, first, probably on the 6th day, and then man commits original sin, which is what Genesis 3:1-12 is about. Also probably this time on the 7th day. We cannot deny original sin, because if you deny original sin, all of the Bible becomes meaningless. Genesis 3 is foundational to everything. But we are basically at time, so I'm going to stop us here for final questions. We will continue with the inherited sin next week.